Hi, guys. Shifu Mark here, and I want to thank you for joining us on Chats today. But before we get into the interview, please hit that like button and hit that subscribe button if you aren't already subscribed. So, my guest today on Chats is the founder of the Wudang West Cultural Center in Oakland, California. He has been a student of Wudang since 2007 after becoming a disciple of Master Yuan Shu Gang. And he's also a 16th generation holder of the Wudang Zhang Sang Feng Pai. In addition to learning the martial and healing practices of Wudang, he has learned other disciplines like Tuina, Zen Shiatsu, and acupressure. He travels regularly around the world to spread and preserve these healing arts so they can be given and carried on by future generations. Please welcome Master David Wei. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm humbled, man. Thank you. That's a lofty introduction you gave me. Thank you. Thank you.
If you if you believe this, sir, I left out a whole lot of stuff. A lot of stuff that was left out there just to try and condense. Hey, Master Wei, thank you very much for joining me on today's chat, sir. So I'd like to get straight into the interview so I don't waste any of your time at all.
If I may, going forward, David is fine.
Oh, David. Okay, no problem, no problem. So David, if you don't mind me asking, how did you start martial arts?
Well, I grew up in a dangerous neighborhood, Richmond, California, East Bay area. And I am a big guy, but I have a big heart. And I was never really into fighting or violence. And so I got picked on a lot as a youth. And so I started martial arts early to kind of feel strong and feel capable and feel powerful, as any youth does, growing up in bad neighborhoods. However, I didn't take it serious until my grandfather had passed. And when my grandfather passed, he was kind of what I understood as my roots, my access to my culture. And as a kid, I was more interested in making money and doing all these street things that I thought were cool. But when my grandfather passed, that's when I realized I didn't know who I was. I didn't have awareness of self, so to speak. And so that's when I just did everything Chinese. Like I spent all my time in Chinatown. I ate everything with chopsticks. I was very annoying. And I found Kung Fu. And what I discovered was I was putting this much effort into my hustle or my grind, but I'd maybe get that much satisfaction. And it would be fleeting. It'd come and it would go, right? But then I put that much effort into Kung Fu because I was busy with my grind. And then I got that much joy and I got that much value and it lasted. Like all I could do was think about Kung Fu and wanting to get more. And so I was like, wow, I'm doing things backwards. And so when I had that realization, I quit my job. I quit all my hustles. I dropped out of school. I was homeless for 6 months because I only wanted Kung Fu. And it's kind of how it all started. I'd say that happened around kind of 98, 99 or so.
And what style of Kung Fu was it that you started with?
I started with a mixed plate. So first it was like some Toad style karate Kung Fu, just like some small mini mall. I don't even remember the school's name or what I ever learned there. It was just something I did as a kid. But the first style that I really dove into was in Hawaii. It was under the tutelage of a gentleman named Bruce Chu of the Dragon Gate, Honolulu Dragon Gate Association. And that's where I got my first sample of martial arts. And by and large, it was a very mixed plate system. It was like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And in a lot of these traditions, the masters kind of closed off and says, you have to practice this, you can only practice this, you have to stay at my school, and they kind of demand loyalty. However, my teacher was the opposite. Hawaii is like a melting pot. You get Japanese arts, you get Filipino arts, you get Chinese arts, you get Portuguese arts, you get French influence, you get all these different martial arts, just kind of right in Hawaii as a melting pot. And so he encouraged me. He's like, go to that school. He'd even name schools. He's like, go over there, see what they're about. Go over there. And I'd go look for my other stuff. I did judo. I did eskrima. I did Muay Thai. I did Krav Maga. I did Shaolin. I did everything that I could find. And sure enough, I'd always go back to my teacher. And, you know, it's because he had such an open heart to let me explore. I trusted him. And so he was my first teacher, and I trained with him for a good 4 years before I left college and came back home to the Bay Area.
All right. So it's 4 years in the Hawaiian martial art. All right, that's absolutely awesome. I think a lot has to be said about your teacher. Like, that's commending him a lot because of the fact that he let you go and study all of these and all these different arts, and you come back to him, and you know he'd still accept you and so on like that. That's great. Yeah, it's
something we don't see very often in the martial arts world. Yeah.
That's very true. An openness to let somebody train in other arts and then come back to the first one that they were doing before. That's very true. So, David, if you don't mind me asking, how did you get into the Wudang arts?
Got it. So that first teacher I had, Bruce, he was really nasty. Nasty in the fact it was all applications, all fighting, high stress. So it was more than just practice these drills. It was do it under stress, do it in this narrow hallway, do it in this staircase, do it with 10 other people circling around you. Like, he always had ways to make it more stressful, right? And the idea was, sure, you can learn a technique, but in the high stress of a real scenario, all those techniques go out the window. And so if you're going to manage stress, you have to train under stress. And so my first training was very, very aggressive. I used the word nasty earlier because it was brutal stuff, all vital strikes and really, really nasty stuff, right? And so when I got proficient in that, there came a point when I realized I could break arms, but I couldn't mend them. And it reminded me of an old saying from my football coach in high school. He said, boys break things, but men will mend things. And so I realized it's way harder to fix, way harder to maintain, super easy to break, right? And so the real challenge then was in fixing things. And so I completely stopped all my fighting and I went into the healing aspects. You know, while I'm in the healing aspects, I realized it's the same thing. The same thing that can hurt someone is the same thing that can heal someone, right? For example, a chin na move, where you're seizing or, you know, subduing someone with some grip or hold or lock. If you do it hard and fast, yeah, it hurts. But if you do it slow and with a smile, it could actually be therapeutic. And so literally the exact same move can be nourishing, right? It's all about the practitioner. It all comes down to my heart and my mind. And so when I realized that martial and medicinal were the same thing, the only difference was me. So that's when I was like, oh, wow, let me go see what being a monk is like. Let me go pursue the spiritual stuff. And so to answer your question, that's how I ended up in Wudang. Like, I wanted to pursue the spirit of the work, beyond the fighting, beyond the healing. You know, what else was there? And so I was a monk for 5 years. And I say monk loosely because it was a monastic academy, right? Where we had a monastic lifestyle, but we weren't per se monks. But it was like 9 to 12 hours a day training, living in the monastery, the dormitory facility of the monastery, eating at the temple, training at the temple. It was pretty much a monk life, but we weren't ordained or anything like that. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, it definitely does answer the question. So with that now, it's a brilliant segue into asking you, what is Wudang Kung Fu?
Great question. So a little bit of clarity, Wudang is a mountain, and it's not just one mountain, it's 72 mountains. And Wudang isn't just one temple, It's hundreds of temples, ruins, shrines, altars, gateways. They're just scattered throughout the whole temple range or the mountain range. And so it's a big deal. And Wudang, if we're going to talk about Wudang Kung Fu, we could talk about what it was, what it is, and what it can be, right? And what it was, I mean, you mentioned Taoism. Wudang was the epicenter for Taoism and Taoist arts, the equivalent of Mecca for Islam, right? Ramadan Kareem, right? Wait, one more day before I eat. And so Mecca for Islam, Lhasa for Tibetans, it's just the pilgrimage destination. And so it's the epicenter for Wudang culture and Taoist arts. And so more than just Kung Fu, you got music, you got feng shui, you got divination, you got palm reading, you got chanting, you got neidan, you got cooking. You know, anything Taoist happened in Wudang because it was my teacher called it the womb. It's the womb of Taoist arts and heritage. So that's what it was. Now, Cultural Revolution happened. A lot of the masters were run off. And what it is now is very different from what it was. Now it's a tourist destination. Now we call it Hollywoodang, right? Because it's bright lights and skyscrapers and movies. And, you know, it's a tourist attraction. It's like Disneyland. Much like Shaolin, you know, no offense to Shaolin and Shaolin practitioners, but the temple, it's a tourist attraction now in China. And so Wudang is very similar. And so there's no more authentic Wudang teaching. Even when I went, all that stuff was gone, right? Because Cultural Revolution was very, very thorough. And so what we have now is kind of it's a mixed plate. It's if it's Taoist, okay, bring it back to Wudang. But Xingyi didn't come from Wudang. The Bagua we have didn't come from Wudang. Tai Chi we have even is a lot of these forms are now imported, especially like the long fist forms, the weapon forms, the animal forms. None of that shit was in Wudang initially. So all of it is contemporary. All of it is mixed plate, kind of what we can salvage, right? And now it's, okay, this is the new Wudang Kung Fu, right? Now, so that's what it was, what it is. My primary interest is what it can be and where it can grow to. And so that's kind of the job of my lineage, of my generation, where we're the foreigners that went to China, that worked hard, spent years and years in the mountain to come back and bring it to the new generation. And I'm really curious to see what it can evolve to, because it's not necessarily the forms, it's the values. It's not necessarily the applications, it's the principles. And beyond the martial, which I feel is a very small view of what's available. You know, I have students now that work in corporate, that work in finance, that work in avant-garde demonstration and detentional youth facilities and cancer facilities and oncology care facilities, and they're doing Wudang Kung Fu. And so what's available, what's possible with Wudang Kung Fu, that's the bigger conversation that I like to have.
That's a really good point, and that's a very wide conversation I believe that one could have. So I think, you know what, that's a conversation we could have at a later time for a later podcast. I do believe I like that. Thank you.
Yeah. Good deal.
You just gave me that idea right there, David. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. So, how does Wudang Kung Fu differ from any other type of Kung Fu?
Well, let's define our terms here. Okay. So Kung Fu just means hard work over time. And so to bring it back to what Wudang was, I want to do everything better than I did last time. That's the essence of Kung Fu. I want to improve just a little bit every try, right? And so if I'm the famous musician that's trained at Wudang, I want to play every song better than the last. I want to hit every note just a little bit better, right? If I'm the famous cook, I want to master these ingredients. I want to be able to cook blindfolded. I want to be able to cut these vegetables perfectly. Everything we do can be improved upon. And so when we have the conscious effort to do things better and improve our skill, improve our awareness, improve our mindfulness, improve our application and sharing, that's Kung Fu, right? However, every morning, if I just get into a routine, it's like, okay, brush my teeth, wash my face, get dressed, go to work. Like, I'm doing the same thing every day over time, but I'm not putting conscious effort into it. I'm not trying to brush my teeth better every time. I'm not trying to wash my face better every time. I'm just going through the motions, right? And so Kung Fu is mindfully building a skill and improving upon it, right? And so what makes Wudang Kung Fu different, right, to get back to your question, is I would say is that it's spiritual, right? I say this a lot because I have a clinic here. I do Chinese medicine. You mentioned that I do healing arts. I have a training space here. We do martial movement and all that. But Wudang, that's a mountain. It's not a dojo. It's not a hospital. It's a temple where people pray. And it just happens to kick ass. It just happens to heal. But the intention is to discover yourself. And then once we discover yourself and your gifts, now you want to share it, right? So my teacher would say, we do Kung Fu to be strong. Why do you want to be strong? So you can help more people. And so if there's a distinction in Wudang Kung Fu, it's self-improvement so that you can be of better service. And I think in other schools, or specifically fighting schools, they're like, oh, get better so I can win. Get better so I can, beat more people, or I can be a champion, or, and then all those things, they never last, right? There will always be someone bigger. There will always be someone stronger. There will always be a better fighter. However, I want to be the best at service. If you're sick, I want you to know you can find me. If you have anxiety, I want you to know you have solace here. If you're in pain, I want you to know that we can give you space for healing and transformation through that pain, right? I don't want to be the best fighter. I want to be the best giver. And so I think those are some things that make Wudang West, or Wudang specifically, distinct from other styles.
Well, that's a great answer. That's a very, very good answer. I'll tell you why I came up with that question is because usually, when I was growing up, I'm in my early 40s now, and of course, growing up, we have a Wu-Tang Clan, and then we got the whole, the bites that were taken out of the movies, Wu-Tang versus Shaolin and stuff like that. So that's really one of the driving forces behind that question. What makes Wudang different from Shaolin and so on like that? Now, as I've grown up, and I've progressed in my martial arts and in my martial arts education as well, you come to find out that some schools actually look at Wudang as being more internal and Shaolin as being more external, right? So I can think of no other better person to ask than you if the differences are like that or not so much so.
It always starts at external. Always starts as external, because we don't know what we're doing. We're learning. We want to learn how to move our bodies. We want to learn how to apply things. The fight is external, right? Many of us get into this for self-defense or self-empowerment. And so it always starts as external, right? Even if you go to an internal school, you still got to learn how to stand. You still got to learn how to move. You still got to move how to move your arms and step and where to look. All these things are external in nature. And so when we talk about hard or soft, softness is something that comes with time. And we'll always start with gross, and then we refine to subtle. We always start with hard, and we refine to soft. And so softness is a destination. if anything, right? And we celebrate soft, right? My tongue, pardon me, be rude, but my tongue is soft. My teeth are hard, right? Your teeth will fall out, but your tongue will stick around, right? Much to many's dismay. And so we celebrate the soft over the hard, right? And everything hard will eventually exhaust and return back to soft. So even though we start hard, the destination is soft. So Wudang, which would be classically interpreted as an internal skill or an internal style, it just means we practice a long time. That's all. You practice long enough to be soft with it. That's all. You practice long enough to be smooth with it. That's all. Right. But the other conversation of internal versus external, Shaolin versus Wudang, is that Wudang is Taoist, and Taoism is inherently Chinese and comes from within China, so internal. But Shaolin, that's Buddhist, and that comes from the Kush regions, Indus regions, India and whatnot. That's external. That's outside of China. And so there's also that perspective too. It's like native to China or external. Right? So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell my thoughts on hard versus soft.
And I completely understand that. That's a brilliant answer. Thank you very much for clarifying that for me, sir. Now, let's go ahead and take it into our third question, David. In your honest opinion, what do you believe is the hardest part of developing one's Kung Fu?
Keeping the attention. Right? If we talk about hard work over time, what's the difference between my morning routine and my practice is that I'm mindful and I'm present and I'm mindfully trying to improve. And so the hardest part is probably keeping the interest, right? Because we say, 3 to 5 repetitions. That'll move the blood. Okay, I feel good. I moved my body. 3 reps. Okay, good, right? 3 to 5,000 repetitions. And now we're building a habit, right? Now we have a practice. 3 to 500,000 repetitions. Now we're in the conversation of cultivation. Now we're talking about transforming and genetic expression, like all these other conversations that take place, right? And so you got to get the reps in. There's no shortcuts to getting your time in. And so if there's a challenge in Kung Fu, it would be in keeping your interest and staying focused. We live in a world of distractions. We live in a world of instant gratification, minute rice and drive-thrus and double-click right swipes, and everything is now, now, now. And so if you can sit down and have discipline and determination and will and perseverance to do one thing over and over and over again, that's probably the biggest challenge. It's just repeating again and again and again. But if you can do that, it's simple, but not easy. Right? So if you can do that, then you're well on your way to mastery. And that mastery, then, that work ethic is really what it dials down to, your work ethic. And in Chinese, we say your ability to eat bitter, right? 吃苦 is how it's translated to, right? Can you eat bitter? Because on the other side of bitter is sweet. But if you only want sweet, inevitably that sweetness will run out and all you're left with is bitter. So intentionally eat your bitter now so that you can have sweet after. And so if people can endure bitter, if people can endure the hardship and endure the perseverance and endure the repetition and keep their interest and keep their mission, right? Because we all get into something for whatever. We have these big lofty goals, and maybe when we realize how hard it is, we forget about our goals, right? And so if we can keep the carrot in front of us and just keep drilling away, then not only do we have mastery to Kung Fu, we have mastery to life.
And honestly, David, those 3 words are the simplest, but yet one of the most profound answers I've gotten to that question. Keep your interest. Right? I love that. I love that. That's awesome right there. That's awesome. So we're going to get into another question, right? And I always like to say it's a very lofty question at that, because I mean, it makes you think, it makes the wheels turn. So if you could teach the new generation of martial artists only one thing, what would it be?
Well, we dial our school down to 3 values. And I'm sure you've heard of them. The 3 treasures of Taoism, the 3 treasures of Tai Chi. We say heaven, earth, and human. And so heaven is above, earth is below, and then human, it's you and I, right? And so martially, we translate those 3 principles to integrity, humility, and sincerity. And so integrity, that's my structural integrity, if you will. That's my ability to keep my word. That's the shape of my punch, right? I have integrity to my shape and form, right? So I'm not going to crumble or break when it's pressure tested, right? And so integrity is the principle of heaven. It's what enables me to stand tall, because my skeleton has structural integrity. So I can hold my head up and explore heaven, right? The second principle is earth, and that's humility, right? Yes, I'm up, but I should realize I'm nothing, right? And so I should hold my head down too. And so that's the sinking your weight, that's the relaxation, that's the song, right? Principle, that's earth, with humility. And so if we can hold both at the same time, that's the communion between heaven and earth, if you will, the pole, right? And so the last one is human, and that's the principle of sincerity. And so that's from my heart to your heart, from my center to your center, right? Again, also very martially and medicinally applicable. And so heaven, integrity, earth, humility, and human, sincerity. I further translate that, and then this is to answer your question of what I want to teach the youth, is show up, integrity, shut up, humility, add value, sincerity. Show up, shut up, add value. And so if there's anything that I want to teach and pass on to the youth, it's that. Make sure you keep your word, be where you say you're going to be, right? Show up, integrity. Have humility, be willing to learn, have an empty cup, right? That's the principle of earth. And sincerity, make a heart-to-heart connection and add value, right? A lot of our youth, it's like, what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? You know, how much is that going to cost? They all care about the substance, right? The material, right? But I actually want to give. I want to add value, and add value in a meaningful way, right? Because I love chocolate. I love my dog. Do I love my dog by giving it chocolate? No, right? And so I want to give something that's appropriate and give something that is of true contribution. And so I need to show up, shut up, and have a heart-to-heart connection so I can be that resource. And so I may have over-explained it, but I hope you get my gist.
No, David, you did not over-explain. I believe you explained it just right for it to be understood in the simplest way possible. Show up, shut up, and add value.
Yeah.
That is great.
Yeah, that's the rules of my school.
That is absolutely great. It makes absolute sense, and I'm in complete agreement with that. I would love to use it, but then that would be plagiarism right there, sir. So let's not do that. Very good, very good. So, David, we have one more question for you. How can you be contacted?
You know, this is funny. I used to say don't. I used to say don't contact me. I'm busy enough. Like, leave me alone, right? But we have this new online thing that we're developing. I have a tea club. I drink a lot of tea. And a lot of my students and a lot of my community, they want to drink tea with me. So we have a tea club where we send tea every month. We have online courses. I have free classes that I do online too. And so you can just find me wudangwest.com. That's just the general way. But even that, like, you're not going to find me. You'll probably find one of my students. Leave me alone.
You just want to teach, practice Kung Fu, and that's it. Just leave me alone. That's what you said.
And I'm a dad now too. And so really, I just want to spend time with my kids and my wife. And so, and that's my new Kung Fu. That's my new sensei. You know, it's my son and my daughter. So
awesome. Congratulations on fatherhood, of course. And, you know, I myself am a father, and it's great. It's great. So I would say, welcome to the hood. Definitely. So, sorry, I didn't hear that one.
I was just celebrating, saying how much fun this is. Please ask another question.
Oh no, that's all the questions I got for you today, sir. Right? But I do have to thank you very much for coming on to my podcast. But with all of that said, man, I just lost my train of thought right now.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, of course you can ask me anything. Go ahead.
So Wynter Tai.
Yes.
That's your last name, Wynter? And then your
yes, sir.
And so what style of Tai Chi do you teach?
Wu style Tai Chi as well as Fu style Tai Chi.
That's small frame stuff. Yeah, so you like to push hands?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay.
Not that I'm any good at it though.
Fair enough, right? So then I would ask you, are there any principles that you transmit to your students?
Keep the weight back, right? Keep the weight back in the heels to keep in ideal posture, right? To never step with our weight into it. To always drop the shoulders so you can connect the arms to your midsection. Yeah, those are the main ones for our students. Yes, to keep it small.
Beautiful. Yeah. So having the weight back, we talk about this in Taoism as well, and in life, right? To observe before you act, right? To listen and see before you speak, right? So to hold back and not advance with a full foot, right? And so we also translate that in our practice and in our Chinese practice, medicine practice as well. So let's say you get caught in the Garden of Eden, right? Let's say you just had the apple, right? Eve just brought you an apple and you realize you're naked, right? And so you want to cover up, you know, your little fig leaf here. And you have two hands that cover down below so you can see it. And that would be your water element, right? And so you have your water element, you're swimming in the water, the next thing you hit is the land, right? So that's your earth element. So two hands to cover my reproductive organs, and then another two hands to cover my navel, which is my earth. Then if I continue up in this landscape view, I have water, then I have land, then I have all the green, the brush, the trees, right? So that'd be my wood element. So I have two hands water, two hands earth, two hands wood, right? And this is where I can bend, torque, and twist from, much like young trees, right? Then above the trees, we have the open sky, right? And so two more hands above that. Well, wouldn't you know, how convenient, my lungs. This is where I breathe. And then two more hands above that, that's my eyes, the luminaries, the sun and moon, right? Fire element. And so we have water, earth, wood, air, fire. Pretty cool. And so when we look at our feet, macro, micro, as above, so below, those same five elements are in your foot too. So we'll translate my hand as foot, the very base, the heel, that's water. Because if you're too far back in your heels, you'll fall. Water, fall, right? But if I'm in the front of my heel, in line with my ankle, that's a very rooted, that's a very grounded place to put your weight. And so we call that the earth element, right? Next, you have the arch of your foot, right? And that's the wood, because wood branches up but roots down. And so from the arch, I can go forward or back, right? In terms of my weight distribution. When I get to the ball of the foot, that's now air element. Because if I were to jump or land, that's where I take flight from, right? It's that ball, right? And then the very tips of the toes, that's fire element. Because if I'm standing on my tippy toes, it burns. It's not easy. So you have the 5 elements in the hands and the feet and the body. Okay? And so those 5 elements, I'm saying that to say this, when we say rooted in the heels and step with an empty foot, right? There's a big interplay between the ball of the foot and the ankle of the foot. Earth and air, or earth and metal, right? Whichever translation you like. But that translates to the upper and lower lip. So it's like every time we shift our weight between those 2 points of the foot, we're kissing Mother Earth.
Okay.
And so I don't know if that was valuable or not to our listeners. However, I love to hear what people are up to in their practice and how they translate the material and then bring it all back to the Taoist origins, because Tai Chi is Taoist in nature.
It was definitely helpful to me, David, because the Qigong that I practice is the 5 animal Frolics Qigong, right? The Huatou version. Right? And everything you just said, everything was just a light bulb in my head, especially when you're talking about the earth element with the front part of the heel and stuff like that, because that just, as soon as you said that to me, it just brought up the bear, right? The bears, the exercises for the bear and so on. And I'm like, wow, yeah, it's exactly what he's saying, right? So I do see the correlation. So I thank you very much for that.
Well, then I have one more question for you with your 5 elements. So yeah, we say bear is earth element, stomach, spleen.
Yeah.
Right. So then what's your monkey?
Monkey's fire.
Interesting. What's your crane?
Crane is metal.
Interesting. What's your what are the other?
Deer.
Deer? Yeah, what's that?
Deer would be water.
Interesting. Okay, and then what's the last one then? Tiger. So tiger is wood.
Tiger is wood. There you go.
Interesting, because my system a little bit different. It's tiger is metal, deer is wood. It's bear as earth, like yours. Then we have monkey, which is water, and crane, which is food. And so
that's different.
Yeah, and it's our Wudang variation of Huatou's 5 elements, right? And so it doesn't matter which element is which, because all of them are all of them, right? If I'm doing a tiger movement, yes, it's from my, what'd you say, wood, so that'd be liver, right?
That'd be wood, yep, exactly. Liver and tendons, yes.
For us, it's lungs, right? And then for another school, it's kidneys. And so all of them are a little bit different, right? However, whatever organ you're working with, the heart, fire element, sternum. Focus on the sternum, because when you lift and tuck the sternum, that gives space for the heart, right? The next one after fire is earth, right? Earth will be diaphragm. Because if I take full deep breaths with my diaphragm, I massage the stomach, spleen, and pancreas. Next one would be metal element, right? You said that was crane. Metal element is for lungs, and that's going to be expressed through your shoulder blades, your scapula. Because if I move my shoulder blades, I move my ribs and I move everything inside my ribs, namely the lungs. And so the way you massage your lungs is by moving your shoulder blades, right? Next, after metal would be water, which is kidneys, right? And so for that, it's your sacrum. Because if you drop the sacrum, you elongate the lumbar and you give room for the kidneys, right? And if you pump the sacrum, you pump your lumbar and you pump your kidneys. Last one would be wood element, and that's your liver. And the way you access your liver is through your floating ribs. Because when you move your rib cage, you massage everything inside the rib cage. And in this instance, we're talking about the liver, right? So those are also access points to give depth to your 5-element play, right? So you can actually manipulate and massage the organs in a very real and tangible way. None of this like energy ooh stuff. You can make the legitimate connection. So if this is a metal, focus on those scapulas. If this is a water, focus on your tailbone, right? And so forth. And that way you're legitimately working those organ systems too.
You know, as you're saying this, I'm definitely understanding everything that you're saying, because you're describing each element, and I'm thinking of each exercise for each animal that I'm thinking. I'm like, you're talking about the movement of the scapula, but for the metal, right? And for me, that's the crane, right? So we have the first exercise is going your arms like that, right? So the scapula is moving when we come like for flight, and then the second exercise is spreading wings. So we're coming up and we're coming down. So the scapula is, so I do see what I do see what you're saying. The movement of the scapula for the lungs, the back has to open up, the lungs have to open up. I do see it. This is such a valuable conversation, David. Thank you so much. Great. So on that note, I'm going to stick a pin right here and I have to say, contact information for Master David Wei will be in the description down below. Also in the description down below will be a link for FeiYue Shoes. If you need FeiYue Shoes, go ahead and click the link down below, get the best prices, the best deals, all at FeiYue Shoes. So, Master David Wei, thank you very much for spending time with me and teaching me some more stuff about Wudang Qigong, teaching me stuff about Wudang Kung Fu and all. It has been a definite learning. Thank you very much, sir.
Bless up, King. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.